I swam out into the middle of the lake to find myself not too.
Okay, we'll get this guy started. So, Tom, Steve, were you guys at the one in August, both of you guys? So this will be a recap of some of that similar stuff, but it'll be good. You weren't at that one, Jeremy, were you? Cool. So, welcome to Video 101. So this is kind of really basic stuff when it comes to video in regards to like cameras and that kind of thing. And then Aaron will be covering more of the graphics side of things. So video really boils down to what your subject is. So when you're looking at a video, when you're watching TV, when you're watching movies and stuff like that, there's always somebody that they're focusing on in every shot. So people don't just take random or just haphazard video shots. When people are, especially in the film industry, they are doing storyboards. They're deciding who's going to be my subject, what angle am I going to go from, all of that kind of stuff. So knowing what your subject is, especially as a camera op and stuff like that, is very important. So that's kind of the first step. So, and the reason being is because when you know your subject, you are able to then you know what to focus on. You also know how to frame the shot, so that way that subject is in the right placement in the shot. But then also you're able to draw attention to that person. So, and I have some photos here just to kind of illustrate that when you're running video, you really are showing people what to look at. You're telling people, here's what you need to see. Here's an important person, thing, that kind of stuff. So, like in this shot, hopefully you can see it. But one thing kind of sticks out among the rest, and that's the horses down in the lower corner, because they're dark. They're the thing that your eye is drawn to. So another one is this. That red arrow going the opposite direction is drawing your attention because it is different. It stands out from the rest of the picture. And likewise with this one, that green tomato, is drawing that attention as well. So, and this one's a little bit different, but you can kind of see just even the texture of the tracks, and that right side is drawing your attention because of that pattern, that differentness of that shot. So when we start to think about, what is our subject, how do we frame that subject, it really helps to then kind of translate to the people that are watching. So like on weekends and that stuff like that, director is a huge deal because you're taking everybody's camera shots that are hopefully awesome, and then you are hopefully translating that to everybody that's watching, that you need to see this person because they're leading worship. They're the ones that are actually coaching directing the people that are worshiping. So that's subjects are a huge deal. So I'll jump to the next one. But so first we have who's my subject. The next thing is focus. So being able to focus a camera is a big deal because if it's not in focus, it's really distracting. But then also it doesn't help to translate that subject or that person in a good way. So like if the worship leader is out of focus, people are drawn more to the fact that that person is out of focus than what the worship leader is trying to do. So, and these kind of all boil down to, what does it take to be a camera op? That you need to have a steady hand, that you're not shaky, that you're able to get stuff into focus and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a funny illustration. I have this video here, and it is really jarring to watch because it's just so shaky. And that's similar to like when we're running a camera here, that when your camera is shaky, that you're drawn more to the fact that the camera shot is shaky than the subject that you're trying to present as well. So, and here's another thing with the focus, your eye is more drawn toward the stone column pillar that's behind her than Sarah here that's out of focus. And just how much better it is, when you're in focus, because, your eyes are drawn to that. And that's probably going to be in the next class about like depth of field, different stuff like that, why stuff in the background is fuzzy and that kind of stuff. That'll probably be in our next video class. So yeah, really, to be a camera op, it's really easy. But you have to have those two skills, having a steady hand and being able to focus the camera. So a lot of the other stuff, you can fudge on and that kind of stuff, but those two things are really important. So the next thing is going to be how to frame the subject. So like where in the frame, so the shot, the little box on the camera, where do you want to put that person on there? Is there a better spot than others to put that person in there? So here's like a little 7-minute video that really kind of captures like the different shots that you can take, but then also where to place them and stuff like that. So.
Welcome to the Lights Film School video tutorial on framing heights. In this video, we'll discuss the importance of properly cropping your subject within a frame. Three common mistakes filmmakers often make when framing a subject are: 1. They leave too much room above the subject's head, which creates dead space. 2. They fail to leave enough room above the subject's head, clipping the top of their head with the top wall of the frame. While this may be advisable for some close-up shots, this is not advisable for medium or full shots. 3. They cut off or amputate their subject at the joints of their limbs. Let's start by looking at a full shot. Notice how your entire subject fits nicely within the frame. A full shot is great for providing context as well as orientating your audience geographically within your world. The full shot allows more than one character to be in the frame at the same time, and it's wide enough to allow your characters to use body language to express themselves. Notice how a bit of room is left both below our subject's feet and above his head. Next, we'll look at the medium full shot. This shot is similar to the full shot, but instead of cropping below the feet, we're making our first cut just above the subject's knees. Notice there is still room above the subject's head at the top of the frame. Next, we'll look at the cowboy shot. Enough space is left below the waist of the subject, so if they drop their hands, their wrists would not be cut off with the bottom wall of the shot. This is, of course, helpful for cowboys who need quick access to their guns and their holsters. In non-Western films, this shot is equally important for subjects who simply wish to put their arms down to their sides. Next, we'll look at the medium close shot. The medium close shot is a great shot when you want to include even less environment and gain more insight into the emotional state of your character. Small emotional nuances may start to register with this image size. That being said, this shot is still wide enough to fit multiple elements within the frame. This shot choice allows you to multitask the character's emotional state with their body language, while at the same time giving you the opportunity to include other characters, props, or surroundings. Next, we have a close shot. This is really one of the first shots when we've made the commitment to focus primarily on the emotional world of our character. Notice how in this shot, we're slightly clipping the top of his head with the top wall of the composition. Let us take a moment to fix that by ensuring that the top wall rides just a sliver above our subject's head. Much better. The actor's face is the main tool used to convey information when you're in this close. As we continue to move closer to our actor, his body can still communicate expressiveness, but it's the actor's face, and specifically his eyes, which start to become the centerpiece for these shots. Punching in even closer, we have the wide close-up. Close-up shots are used to gain access into the inner world of your characters. The top part of the frame usually rides just above the top of your character's head, while the bottom of the frame includes just a slither of the arm as it starts falling off from the shoulder. Let's give our character a little bit of lead room, which will give him some breathing room and help ensure that our frame has a more dramatic sense of balance. There we go. Now let's talk about the full close-up. This shot can be tricky, since the framing can quickly become awkward if we lose the subject's eyes or chin. As a general rule of thumb, you want to keep the subject's eyes in the top 2/3 of the frame, and you don't want to clip the subject's chin with the bottom frame of the composition. In this shot, we've included a little bit of the subject's shoulders, and now we're allowed to cut the top of his head with the top wall of the composition. A medium close-up. A medium close-up will punch in a little closer. Notice we start to lose more of the top of the subject's head. His chin is also getting dangerously close to the bottom wall of the frame. The benefit to this shot is that it allows you to dig even deeper under the character's skin to see what is beneath the words they're saying. It should also be mentioned that budget-minded independent filmmakers often like tighter shots like this because they're cheaper and quicker to light. Now let's move into an extreme close-up. An extreme close-up goes a step further, and we allow the chin to dip below the bottom wall of the composition. In this shot, we frame the bottom wall just below the subject's lips. This is as close as we can get into the inner world of a character before moving into macro close-ups. Macro close-ups. Macro close-ups allow us to feature a particular part of the body. For example, a wristwatch, as we can see in this case. This shot is common when a filmmaker is trying to punctuate a narrative point. For instance, a character walking along the side of a desolate highway at night by themselves might hear something moving in the bushes to the side of the road. The filmmaker, in this case, may decide to shoot a macro close-up of the character's ear to help punctuate the sound. There are no absolute rules for framing heights. Many filmmakers will simplify framing height terminology by using only 3 loose terms: full shot, medium shot, and close-up. The definition of some of these framing heights vary from set to set, so make sure you talk to your crew members beforehand to make sure you're all on the same page.
Cool. Is that helpful? And I totally forgot that I didn't introduce myself, so sorry guys. You're talking to you and you don't even know who I am. So I'm Zach. I'm the technical director here. I do everything. So Nate's my boss, but aside from that, like I do everything else that he doesn't do, kind of a thing. So I oversee, technical director, so I help to oversee lighting, video on weekends. James Pusey is kind of the head of our whole team. He's the creative director. But yeah, I do IT stuff here. I'm more of a hobbyist in video, but now I'm starting to do more video stuff as well, just as we train and stuff like that. So we're starting to develop video content that our Cell Network people and here at Cornerstone can use as resources. So we're trying to develop this whole package that people can watch and train, so that way, as we try to onboard people, it can be a lot easier. So, yeah. So a little bit about framing there. It's really important to be able to know those shots, so that way when the director calls out, this is the kind of shot that we need, that you're able to get those. And I know at Salt, you kind of do a little bit more static, but it doesn't make it any less important that you're able to frame a shot, make sure that it's in focus. And I know with like Weekend and probably Salt as well, that it might seem like a menial task that you're back there, and especially if you're like videotaping Mark Vance, who doesn't move at all, you're doing nothing. But it is really important. We capture these so that way people can watch them if they missed, or if they're in Turkey and they just want to stay connected and that kind of stuff. So, and actually, like, our video team has the most visibility potential when you look at, when we're posting stuff on Vimeo and there's like thousands of views. On a weekend we have 2,500 something people, but through the magic of the internet, people from all over can actually watch that content as well. So don't belittle the fact that you might just be holding steady on a shot of Mark Vance that's not moving at all. But take pride in the fact that, you're trying to do the best that you can with, with how we've directed you guys to do things. And so we do really value you guys. And so I just want to make sure that you guys know that. So when we talk about framing, he mentioned a little bit, putting people off to the side of the shot, not dead on. And there's reasons for that. So how many of you guys know what this is? What is it? Mm-hmm. Any other guesses? It's what we use to frame a shot for sure. How many of you guys have heard of the golden ratio? Come on, engineer. Right? So a lot of things in nature are based off this, that there's this ratio that is found in nature that just kind of has this symmetric and, I don't know what you call it. It just kind of grows and grows and grows. Like if you look at the pine needles on a tree, they kind of take this into account. Like, it's kind of the tree, you have your branch, but then you have the things on the branch, and it kind of just disseminates out from there. So the thing that we find about the golden ratio in video is that it's very naturally, very pleasing to your eye to frame something with this kind of thing in mind. And we don't necessarily talk about the golden ratio, but we talk about, it's called the rule of thirds. So first off, I'll give you some shots with like the golden ratio. This picture is very pleasing. That tree is off to the left. Your eye is drawn to the tree over there. Kind of where that spiral kind of gets smaller. Another one here with the lighthouse. The lighthouse is the subject in the shot with, the sky and stuff in the background. So the way that we use this in framing shots is the rule of thirds, which you can kind of see things line up on one side of the shot or another. And there are instances where you do frame up somebody centered in the shot. It's usually when you're looking at the camera and you're talking right at it, is usually when you are framing them centered in the shot. But as for more like creative or more dynamic shots, we use the rule of thirds in order to be able to put our subject in the right spot. So like James here is on the left of the shot because he is facing outward. So he's kind of more in the one side of the shot, so that way when he's looking out, you can see the stuff that's before him. So you can see the lines. The rule of thirds with these boxes is really similar to the golden ratio. And so I'll talk more just in the rule of thirds and less about the golden ratio now. So if we take the golden ratio off, you can kind of see how I frame this shot. James is off to the left there. And it's very dynamic, creative, because you can see what he's looking at. You can see, that stuff in the background, but you can tell that he is the subject in that shot. And even a closer shot here, in focus, luckily. And here's another shot with him just straight on. So straight on shot, centered there. And I'll go into more reason why we frame them off to the side and that kind of stuff here in a little bit, but I'll jump onto the next thing with, he mentioned in the video, but too much headroom. So when you put too much space above somebody's head, it's called, that space above them is called headroom because it's the space above their head. And that tends to be really awkward, especially with Jeff Dodge. When you do this to him, it makes him look even shorter than he already is, which he doesn't need that. He already has that complex when he's standing next to Rob Warren and that kind of stuff that is behemoth. So good headroom really helps to clarify that. And if you watch any video where like they're trying to portray somebody as small or a midget or that kind of stuff, they will do this like overshot with them with a lot of headroom. So that way it makes them look super short and super tiny. And it gives us an effect that they're small, weak, or whatever. And if you want to frame them big, you try to fill the frame with them, make sure that they kind of have this upshot, so they're kind of towering over all this kind of movie magic stuff that you're like, oh, now that I know that, I can see this in movies. I'm thinking back to like the kindergarten, I think it's the Kindergarten Cop, like the short midget type person. Maybe it's not the right movie, but he just looks super short because he's like on this like bottom inch of the shot. But so too much headroom, and then there's not enough headroom. It's very obvious to know that you're cutting off somebody's head. So we don't like to decapitate people if we can help it. So proper framing, leave that little bit above their heads. And like they said in the video, the only time they kind of break that rule is when you do extreme close-ups where you're really getting really tight, which for majority of what we do, we don't get that close. Not that our cameras can even get that close anyway. So, a little bit tighter shot, got that headroom still, you're not clipping off his hair or anything like that. And on our cameras, we do have those guides to kind of give you an idea of where the hair should kind of land. So here, back to like the rule of thirds, kind of jumping around. We're talking about, lining somebody up on the edge of the frame. So I don't know what term you guys use, Jeremy, to put people off to the edge there, but the reason why you do that is because it looks more natural. You can kind of see what he's trying to look at sometimes. But the opposite reason of that is if you don't do enough, it looks kind of awkward. He's like right at the edge of the wall, and it kind of gives this appearance like a kid that's like running into a wall because there's that like the visual wall there that you don't know if he's going to run into it or something like that. So, proper framing, especially when they're like, when you're shooting at them from an angle. So like our cameras here are 1 and 4. If you're shooting off to the side, off this direction, you put them off to that side of the frame. So that way when they're looking forward, you can kind of see. Here's another shot of Taylor. Even like the drums, getting them off to that side so you can kind of see the drum set, but it's very unnatural looking versus if you were to not give them enough lead room. So, and here's another shot just of the keys, straight on. You can maybe tend to put them more centered, but if you're off to the side again, putting them on that side of the frame. So, and even like Taylor, here's another shot. So I kind of chopped their heads off a little bit, but kind of get that idea. You kind of understand why you put them off to that side. And it's really pretty easy to understand. Like in our setup, there's 1 and 4, cameras 1 and 4, and then there's 2 and 3. 2 and 3 tend to be more straight on shots, tend to be the worship leader that's leading. And then the side shots tend to be more creative, putting the people off to the side like this. And so, when we're talking about camera shots, or talking about multi-camera shots like we do on weekends, you need to know what's important, what's not important, so that way you're not all getting the drummers all at the same time. Because the drummer, in the grand scheme of like the worship service, isn't the most important thing to watch on a weekend. It is the worship leader that's actually leading the song. So we have, this triangle here that illustrates, the top is the most important. So you can kind of see the width there. Shows you kind of the idea of how much air time that person gets. So, next important, less important, and not that important. And the way that we do that with IMEG is the worship leader is the most important. The worship leader should be the one that is viewed the most of all the shots that are taking. And, every other shot, should be jumping back to the worship leader if you're cutting away. The next people are the other vocals, because they're the ones that are visually leading the song. The instruments and that kind of stuff, though fun to look at, aren't necessarily the most important people to concentrate on, because they're not the one leading the people through hey, I'm opening up my mouth, we're starting this next verse now. And also they jump into a prayer time, then you're already on them, that kind of thing. Then we have acoustic keys, electric, and then drums and bass are kind of at the bottom that, they're fun to look at, but they're not the most important subject on the platform at that time. Not that anybody, don't hear that they're valued any less. They're important, especially the drums and bass are the ones that keep us going. But the worship leader is the one leading the people. They're the ones that are shepherding the people. So visually, they should take the most airtime of all the people that are on the stage. Does that make sense? You understand, I'm not trying to berate the instrumentalist, but as far as IMEG shots go, that's why they're important. That's why, even Jeremy, I don't know, this is something I've been meaning to roll out too, is just this idea. And even when Brandon Rhoda, who works for Ross Video, does a lot of video stuff. He worked for a big church up in Minneapolis. He kind of shared this idea with us. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Why the worship leader, so the singular person that's kind of leading the song, then you have backup vocals and that kind of stuff, is really the most important person leading and shepherding. That's why we should make sure that they're getting the most airtime. So, no, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. It's being able to fill those out. But then always having, and that kind of goes to my next part, is having one camera that's on the worship leader, because you're going to go back to them after you cut from the electric guitar solo or whatever. But you need that shot to go back to. So camera 3 can't be moving and roving, but they need to be as, locked down on them, maybe pushing and panning, but you need to have that go-to shot. The worship leader is that go-to shot that you're cutting from them to go to, the instrumentals and that kind of stuff. But you need to be able to go back to them. So being able to communicate that to the camera ops that, hey, it might sound boring, but you're the most important shot that we have. So don't suck, and make sure that you don't, aren't fiddling around and stuff like that, because we're going to be on you the most. And so not to belittle that position that, I'm not doing fun stuff like pushing and pulling and, doing these really creative pans and zooms and stuff like that, but those might be fun, but the most important person is that shepherd that's leading. So, makes sense? Any questions? Oh, good question. So IMEG stands for image magnification. So the reason why we capture on weekends is for capture. The only thing that's really called IMEG specific is when we put the pastor up during the service. That's IMEG. The reason why we do that is because, 5'2" Jeff on stage, you can't see him as well from the back row of our auditorium. So we put him up on that 16-foot by 9-foot screen, and you can start to see more of his emotion, facial expressions, stuff like that. It's a lot easier to connect with the speaker, pastor, when you can see those facial expressions and that kind of stuff. It's kind of like when you're reading a text message. I don't know if that's sarcastic or if he's being serious. Emojis help a lot, which that's basically IMAG. So, but yeah, the rest of it is more, I don't know what you call that, our capture. That's what the person in Turkey was watching, is those creative shots. And I know that Saul, you did like the locked on wide shot, the tied up close shot for the speaker, pastor, whatever. And those are very important shots, because like for worship, it's hard to see everything going on. And for weekend, our 4 camera shots, the reason why we do the different camera shots is to make it interesting and engaging. Not that you have to have it, but it's more pleasing to watch in some ways. So not to belittle either thing that we're doing, but there's a reason for both. So yeah, that's kind of my little spiel real quick and dirty overview. So